I love when a TV series is able to change and adapt and make every single season feel really different and unique and separate on their own without kind of abandoning like the central premise or what the series is. And Servant Season 2 is a fantastic example of that. First season, we have the nanny, she comes, she Pinocchios the doll into a real baby or whatever happens, and the season is about that and the baby living with them, and is it going to be found out? Is the mother Dorothy going to remember that her original Jericho baby died, and all these things, and it's really centralized. We're claustrophobic, trapped in this house for almost the entire time, and it's really about the nanny and who she is and why she's there. Why has she done this? What baby is it? What is it? Is it a magic baby? Is it a normal baby? All these kind of things. And now season 2 is essentially like the hunt for Jericho. It's completely different. He's not in the season at all. If you told me season 2 of this show had no baby Jericho in it, I'd be like, I don't even understand what it'll be then. What will it be? But it's this amazing kind of desperate hunt by Dorothy, the mum. Claire from 6 Feet Under, just killing it. She's so good in this role. Everyone's amazing, but her and Ron are really like the standout. Rupert Grint is just fantastic. He gets to kind of flex so many acting muscles I've never seen him do. I mean, I've only seen him as Ron in Harry Potter, so that really is just the one role, but it's so exciting to see him be such a different character, like so on the edge, so damaged. All these characters are so damaged and broken from this one moment, this tragic moment in their lives. And the one aspect of this season that really works for me is that even though we are kind of always focused on that tragedy and it's always stemming from that, we don't actually have to experience that moment. Like last season, it was all building up. The last half of the season was building up to that reveal, that moment. And in episode 9, we just had to deal with it for a whole episode, building up to it and then it happening. And then the aftermath of all of that, of the baby's death and the tragic accident and the mistake and all those things, which was just so hard to watch. And so this season kind of isn't bogged down in that kind of utterly almost unwatchable tragedy, and we're kind of able to, appreciate and enjoy a bit more of the supernatural like turning of it. Like we start focusing more on the cult, we start focusing really on like, who is Leanne, this nanny? And at times they're like almost hinting that she's some kind of ghost or spirit or some kind of, vengeful angel that can do magical things. It's never really clear, and I really love how close they go to saying certain things. Like at one point someone says, you know what she is, you know what we are, but he doesn't actually say it. And it's really fun to kind of think, everyone could probably see their own kind of view of what it is. At this point, I still kind of think it's just like a cult of magical witches that think God is telling them to do things. And, they think they're being told by God, but is God really speaking to them? Have they all just got this kind of bizarre power, this magic? Because she did, his hands, he couldn't feel. Toby Cabell couldn't feel anything, and now he can, due to people doing stuff, making prayers, and all these things that are kind of undeniable. And like when Ron ODs in that amazing Christmas episode, and then she hits him, breathes on him for like 2 seconds, brings him back to life. And so there are moments where it's like, at this point, it's impossible to think that they're not supernatural in some way. But what exactly are they? And who do they think they really are communing with? Like they keep saying it's him. But is it God? Is it just some kind of deity, some kind of being? And they're kind of translating it in their own minds to God. And all of this stuff is really fascinating because there's never one moment where they go, this is exactly what it is. We're laying it down. This is what it is. It's A, B, C, and this is the answer. So I really like how kind of vague it is while also explaining so much. I do think this season is kind of an improvement over season 1, although there are a couple of aspects of season 1 that I really, really enjoyed that I think this season isn't necessarily lacking because, the story's adapted and changed and we're moving on, and the hunt for Jericho is so focused and it's so hell-bent on this one thing. So there's not really time in the other way where it was just kind of the life and living. Like I loved all the scenes where Ron would come over, and I love that dynamic as well, just of Ron and his sister's wife, who he's friends with and he loves getting drunk with, and how they've all kind of bonded over this tragedy, but the two men are kind of separate in that because they know what's really happened to the baby and Dorothy has blacked it out. So it's a really interesting kind of family dynamic. But one thing in season 1 that I really, really loved was just Ron and Sean going down into the basement and just having like a drink of wine in the cellar, and just so many times where he's just like pulling out a thing of wine and talking about the wine and drinking the wine. There was just so much wine drinking in season 1. There still is wine drinking in this season, but it was such a interesting kind of aspect of that first season that was so prominent. There's also way less kind of food porn shots, way less MasterChef fancy food kind of scenes. There's a couple, like in the Christmas episode, we get some really great kind of food porn moments, but overall, that's kind of completely abandoned, where there's just too much other stuff going on with the main plot. So I was a little disappointed by that, because the first season was like all these things, but also just 10% food porn show, and like looks like MasterChef, and just I loved him talking about it. He's like, I'm serving you this and this crumbed with a thingy thing and dipped with salt, and I just really liked that. It was like this little quirk on the show. It is still there, but just not as prominent. I mean, but who cares, because this season we are mostly focusing on trying to find Jericho. Those first few episodes are so terrifying, because Dorothy, like, she needs to find her baby, but then the cops come and they're like, oh god, this lady lost her baby, she's going crazy, she thinks some random cult leader that died in one of her news reports, like, did it, and all these kind of things. And so then the rest of the family have to trick her and manipulate her and make sure that she doesn't go out and spread all this crazy news, because I don't know, they baptized a real baby, and so that baby is really gone, but everyone thinks the baby's dead. And I don't know, it was just really interesting how that kind of all work together. But then we get to the point where they actually find Leanne, like a lot earlier in the season than I thought we were going to get to, during an amazing scene, which is kind of the big food aspect of the season, so that's probably why I liked it. And Sean's like, oh, I don't want to make pizza. He's like, pizza's below me. But then those pizzas he's making look so beautiful, that wood fire pizza, and I love the idea of them faking a food pizza delivery service to get in there. They get in there, and then the season just kind of turns on a dime when it's like, okay, no, Dorothy is going crazy now. She's drugged Leanne, has Toby bring back Leanne to the house, and then she goes crazy. She locks her up in a basement, and the rest of the season is like a kidnap story, where it's like a double kidnap story, where it's like, you've taken my son, well, I'm going to kidnap you until you bring my son back. So it's like a double kidnapping. She locks her up in like the attic, and at one point, she buries her alive. Like, that was so extreme and intense. Seeing Sean like holding her and be like, Dorothy, you've gone too far. I'm like, this show is changing and adapting and just being something entirely different, while also feeling like the absolute natural next step of last season, where it ended with Jericho disappearing. And I was really confused. I'm like, I wonder if they're going to get him back straight away, or what season 2 is going to really be, and what season 2 ended up being, instead of kind of this tragic tale of grief and kind of denial, and then this baby coming in and mixing it all up and just being so confused and scary about like what Dorothy is going through, and she's not able to deal with that trauma because this baby is here, and it's like the surrogate baby and all these really intense things. And now it is like not really about like, is Jericho her baby or not? It's just she needs to find her baby. Like, she needs to find it, and a mother's desperation and need for that. And I was really interested at how compelling it was, where they didn't really kind of touch upon if Dorothy or not was going to kind of, you know, turn again and realize what had actually happened. Because in season 1, there were so many moments where she'd suddenly go catatonic and the lights will shine and everyone in the family's like, oh no, she's remembering, oh no. But this season didn't really have any of those aspects of like, is she going to remember, is she not? And it's really just like, we've got to find Jericho. I'm going to do anything we can to find Jericho. And so the cult leader lady, she's not back at all, but Mr. Uncle Man, dirty, grotty, feeted Uncle Man, he's back, and he's exceptional once again. All that scary, kind of almost half gibberish mutterings of like religious stuff and going mad and all these things. He was such a compelling character last season. And this season, just as much, if not more, scary and interesting and terrifying. The one thing that he didn't do again was sleep in a baby's crib, because in season 1, that was the most scary, terrifying moment, where he's just like sleeping in the baby's crib and the baby's just on the ground, and that's just terrifying for a million reasons, but also just looks incredibly uncomfortable. You don't want to stretch your legs out when you're in bed, man. You want to crawl up like a little baby. Terrifying, very unpleasant. So there wasn't any moment that was kind of that bizarre and just like, what? But this season, we kind of find out, like, she is, whatever the cult is, whatever they are, whether they're ghosts or angels or just witches with magical powers, whatever it is, she has kind of abandoned her cause. They always get sent to a certain place, and in season 2, Leanne is at this house that she needs to be, so they've been sent her there to do like her mission, to save them there. Then tragically they all die when she leaves, which is kind of really intense, because like, she was there and she was going to save them, so there's that heartbreak there. But the fact that she, like, you know, didn't want to go there originally, and she went to Dorothy and she helped Dorothy, and then now they're like, actually, we gotta make a reunion. We gotta do a reunion. And then in the last few episodes, we find out that means the most insane thing ever, where they stab their eyes out, chop them up, do a little dance, stab themselves while doing a little dance, and then they burn them. And it's just like, those 4 steps, hearing those 4 steps in that video, where it's like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. Terrifying. Reminded me of the Dharma Initiative in Lost Videos, where it's just like this very plain dressed kind of looking guy just explaining things, but what he's explaining is just terrifying and insane and just absolutely monstrous. Like, these guys, yeah, if you turn on these guys, they're not cool with it. Like, they don't have any black sheep. They kill those black sheep. So with Leanne's turn at the end of last season, where she actually gives Jericho back to the cult, and they all do the big hug thing, and the cops like driving past, it's like, oh, that hug looks weird. Group mass hug in the middle of the road. Then he drives back like 10 seconds later, and they're all disappeared. That's super weird. They all pull like a Michael Myers, where they just suddenly ran away or dispersed, or they're ghosts and they evaporated or something. But yeah, that was a bit weird. They didn't really explain if that was like, you know, just a stupid filmmaking trope where they were just gone, they ran away really quickly, or hiding behind trees, or if they're magic and they just poofed and disappeared. I am enjoying how vague it is, but sometimes I'm a little annoyed by like little things like that where I'm like, it feels like it's pretty obviously magic, like doors are shutting and closing like a horror film, but then sometimes it's so real and so like kind of, I don't know, it's interesting. But so we have Leanne kind of turn on Dorothy when she finds out that Dorothy kind of accidentally killed her baby, and I think that Leanne kind of sees that it's not really an accident, and she was kind of, it was her fault. Like, she didn't notice, she didn't take care, the baby died in the car. It was Dorothy's fault. So Leanne kind of sees it in that way, and she kind of turns on Dorothy for most of the season. And then Dorothy does a couple of things, like bury her alive. They kind of make it, that relationship's starting to strain. But then the arc kind of the season is that Leanne kind of forgives Dorothy, and we find out Leanne has serious mummy issues. She's literally got a big mannequin and dresses her up in a dress, and she's like, she reminds me of my mother. She reminds me of my mother. They have the same eyes. Your mother has dead mannequin eyes? Terrifying. Terrifying. But what we get, little glimpses of the mum, what we hear, she sounds awful. So, I don't know. It makes sense. I really like the bit where Ron's just like, yeah, that whole mannequin mum thing, that's some deep shit. Maybe you should talk this out with me. And then he has sex with her. If you had told me that I would ever see Ronald Weasley have sex while it's snowing because the glass is shattered in the roof, potentially due to Magic Lady Girl, and he has sex with a Magic Pinocchio lady who's 18, and then he would start crying during the sex, I would have called you a damn liar. I would have been like, I don't think Ronald Weasley will ever do that. But he did it, and I saw it. And it was pretty weird. Rupert Grint is actually astonishingly good. He is maybe the best character in the show. He's so angry and annoyed, but like, he's so broken inside. And he's got such a charm about him while being so kind of vulgar. And just that moment in the Christmas episode. I love a good Christmas episode that's kind of mixed and perverted, and all the family have to get together, but it's really, it's not working, and everyone's like, oh God, I wish we didn't have to do this Christmas dinner. And he is exceptional, and he's just smashing lines of coke, and they're doing like charades and stuff, and he's just losing his mind. Amazing performance. I really, really liked him. That episode was really good. Just all the little things, the way it was building and building to that moment where then he OD'd and then Leanne brought him back to life. Just exceptional stuff. And so with Leanne's mother issues, it becomes clear that she wants Dorothy to be that kind of surrogate mother. And as it kind of turns, and then that nuance with the veil, she's like going to kill her and throw her in the fire and do all these crazy things. She cuts her so deep and so painful. There's so little violence in the show that every time they do anything, like just that cut down the arm was so graphic and so intense. Really, really shocking. Didn't know what was going to happen. But then Dorothy just hits her with a shovel and she saves her. And like, you see in Leanne's face at that moment how happy she is that, Dorothy clearly does care about her and she will protect her and all these things, which was really, really great. And kind of that arc came full circle. And instead of them having to go and find the cult and fight the cult, Leanne, due to magic or just being part of the cult, gives back the baby, and the season ends with such a cathartic feeling, like such an amazingly cathartic feeling where you think Sean, Toby Cabell is going to be like, tell her the truth, and I'm like, we're 5 minutes towards the end of the final, the finale of the season, he's going to tell her and it's going to break down, we're going to end on this tragic note. But season 1 ended on a really tragic note with the disappearance of the baby, so I really like that this season, after all the hard work, after all this, struggle and strain, we get the baby back. And it's just such a great cathartic moment, and just seeing the baby there. But then there's a little bit of a dark twist where Leanne is like, I know there's something dark in me. I know they're all going to come and try and reunion me and burn my body. But I burnt your body and I killed you. And she's buried her in like the wall space. That lady she's killed. and then all the lights go out in the street, and it goes full magic supernatural craziness, which I loved, because this season slowly throughout has kind of abandoned the is it not supernatural real life kind of thing, and I kind of figured it would when it started delving more into the cult, but I'm really glad how they're doing it, where it still has this really, you know, real world feeling to it. It's not getting outlandish magic. And it's not getting all Harry Potter where they were waving wands about and being like, we got him, Leviosa, you're alive, or whatever. It's really grounded in this dirty, real feeling, and these cult people feel really real, whether or not they are alive or dead or magic or spirits or whatever they are, and I'm really enjoying that vagueness. I do hope that they kind of explain more towards the end, and I'm really curious what's going to happen now. Now they got the baby back. Is it just going to be the family unit, all four of them, versing the cult? So yeah, super curious, really loving this show, love the tone, love the feel. It's just such a claustrophobic feeling of being trapped almost always in this little house. And I really like that aspect of it. Like, we see glimpses outside, but it's really, really great. I love how it starts to snow and we build up to Christmas in the back half of the season. That's a really fun kind of visual element to add to it. Yeah, just an amazing show, really compelling. And we didn't have an episode where we knew a baby's gonna die, then we see the baby die, and then she hugs the baby for 4 days. Because that was too unpleasant. I cannot emphasize how much I found that just so traumatic, and that was just way too much. And so we're able to build off that without kind of living in that morbidly horrific moment. Because yeah, that was just, oh God. I absolutely love how much I have changed my perspective of the character Leanne, the nanny. When she first rocked up in those first few episodes, just having, you know, brought this baby back to life, or maybe put a baby in place of the doll, and just not reacting to it and being like, that's just Jericho, that's just Jericho, I don't know what you're talking about, that's just Jericho. Just so off-putting, so terrifying. I just hated her. I was just like, oh, she's so evil and weird. Oh! But now, every single little glimpse into her past and that character development and learning so much more and where she's come from and what she's doing and all these kind of little, you know, puzzle pieces that are all fitting together. Now when this season ended and she's got all this darkness in her and she's terrified, but she's gonna fight the fight and fight against her enemies and all this stuff, I was just like, yes, I love this character now. They've done such a good work of like putting her in one place at the start of the series and making me feel a certain way, and now we just feel so differently about her, and it's just exceptional. Her performance is amazing. I'm loving it. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment below. I'd love to know what people think of this season and last season of Servant. It's just, I don't know, it's such an interesting, bizarre, terrifying kind of premise and show, and they're doing so much with it. Yeah, I'd love to know what people think. Hit me up.